Okay, it's 6 o'clock and we have a quorum. We're going to call the meeting to order. And just noting that Mr. Padilla is absent today. So we are not going to be going into closed session, which we usually do. So we'll go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. And if you feel so led, remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. Do the, not on this one. We do not have public comment tonight. So we will go straight down to the board president's report. So the first thing I wanted to mention is in your folders. You guys probably all saw those. On the left-hand side of your folder are our norms. And so each time we'll just bring this up because if there's something that you all want to add or feel we need to address, we'll do that each time. The only thing I want to just remind us all about, because sometimes this happens to me, but just making sure that like your social media, that you're logged off of it, that we're not on it during our meeting, all of that is subject to open records and we shouldn't be engaging in that during our meetings. And really that goes along with all what we've been talking about, good governance and stuff. So sometimes I forget and I'm logged on my computer at home. So it looks like I'm on, so I don't know if that happens to any of you guys, but so just keep that in mind. Remember that. And then just quickly wanted to check in with everybody about summer leadership. And Morgan, you're in. So we have the opportunity to go down on Wednesday night and we'll have a hotel room Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, and then we leave Saturday. So if you are going and you're not going to stay for those amount of days, just be sure to let Linda know so she can cancel the room or we're not having to pay for that. So Morgan, you're going. No. And you two are going as well, right? Okay. And Edgar won't be going either. So good, that is good. And then you guys got my email about just kind of like what to expect while we're there, and your spouse is welcome to come along. Usually at conferences, oftentimes they'll be allowed to go to sessions and go to things, but the conference, we were lucky enough to win a lottery pool to get to go in person. So they're limiting how many guests can go. So unfortunately, they won't be able to attend any of the workshops or anything. And then also we've gotten one dinner invitation. So just be sure to accept those invites so you know what to expect, and so we can let our vendors and stuff know. And then committee reports. Morgan, do you have any?
I do not believe so, ma'am. No.
I'll do one on HRC. HRC is fully stocked right now. We served a little under 120 people this last week. And people are coming to the line with a lot different mindset and with understanding that they have a different outlook at life right now, which is really nice to see. So the numbers are coming down. We're getting some more volunteers, and that's always exciting to see that. HRC is becoming an organization that more and more people know. And of course, with the golf tournament happening right now, we're getting a lot of people also looking at the organization and what we're doing. So it's a nice time to be in HRC.
Felix, do you happen to remember the day that they are doing the COVID vaccine shot clinic?
Donna told me that she was setting it up. It didn't get.
Okay.
I saw her yesterday.
Okay.
But
I wasn't sure if we had a date that we might be able to share with the public. Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember.
What's the tournament date?
The 12th.
June 12th.
Terrence, I know you're a golfer.
I'm working on it.
All right, anything else?
That's it.
We had I think they had a Saturday session for the yard task force. I wasn't able to attend. And we had a meeting Wednesday. So we worked on our goals. We have 3 goals, and hopefully within next month, we'll be able to bring it to the board, kind of the work that we've been working on. But it's been, once again, really hard work, but really good work. And so I'm very happy with it.
Good. Sarah?
Let's see, for HEF, we did meet, and they were talking about the event in the fall. And I think they were getting close to settling on a date. It's going to be around like October 8th or 9th is what they were looking at. They just need to finalize the contract. So I think mark that down tentatively. Actually, it's going to be at a new facility. What was it called?
In Georgetown, like no way.
It's not a dance.
It like celebration.
It will have, but it's not at Copeland because there's not enough capacity.
This place looks pretty.
Yeah.
I'll leave.
Okay.
It's probably really nice. But anyway, it's around that time. So mark that down. And then they're gearing up to do the start taking in the grant applications. And they did confirm that they will go to the schools and offer trainings for the teachers to help them write the grants.
Good.
That should be coming soon.
Celebrino.
Celebrino, that's it.
There you go.
Philip?
No, I have nothing.
All right. Well, I attended the district, you guys helped me out, emergency management meeting. And I wanted to just share with you guys how, so many things happen behind the scenes that we are so unaware of because the people that we hire to do the jobs are doing such an incredible job. And being in that meeting, there's so much thought and consideration and questions asked and, really deep diving into every possible situation. So we should feel proud that we have the people working on that kind of thing and deciding, and coming together with the other big entities in town, the Wilco and the city, and really trying to be, as efficient and available when emergencies or crisis or things like that happen. So Henry led it, I think, or Kendra, I don't know who leads, both of them that day that I went to the meeting just did a fabulous job of like bringing the information forward and talking through possibilities and stuff. So just know that that is happening, and nobody ever wants to use that. It's kind of like knowing CPR. You know it, but then you don't want to ever use it. Same thing, but just knowing that we're prepared and ready. And even bringing in outside groups that potentially would play a part in if there's ever a tragedy or something in our city, bringing in those kinds of groups too. So I just thank you, Henry and Kendra, for all that work, because I know that is a lot.
And I think also, yes, I watched the city council meeting yesterday, and the mayor actually spoke on that, and he was very, he spoke very highly of the process and that level of collaboration. I think that's great for our community, so.
And I think if we can ask Henry, I think, Henry, isn't there a training that the board will be asked to participate
Yeah, I haven't done the research. I think the city councils are required to go through a specific
Emergency
form of
management.
training, which is executive and governance level. It's like G207. And we're going to get some information to y'all. I know that for sure we want to expand that little emergency management talk group that's now kind of going on a regular basis to include board members, and city council members are sitting on that. So really, I listened initially, but you may want to delegate that. It might be that the two that represent us on our emergency operations committee or our district safety committee might also want to serve there. But there's some training in the summer, but also in the fall that I would encourage y'all to participate in. And a lot of it's local and it's free, and it really gives you an overview, not so much of tactics, but how you as policymakers and arbiters of the budget would play a role in a big disaster. And it gives you some exposure to how disasters are managed under the NIM system. And y'all may remember from a few years ago when I gave you a presentation, I gave you an introduction to what NIMS is. And it's really about understanding what resources we have and what hazards we need to think about. And then budgets are what budgets are. What do we commit in the way of resources? And then if something happens, how do we respond? So I am also equally glad to see the connections being made with the city now. And even though we were working, it was not in this type of order. Irwood was really lined up with us as well as Chief Hall, but we weren't really talking at the executive level with city at that time. So.
Well, thank you for bringing that back. I know you played a role in initiating that back again. We used to do that a long time ago. So thank you for bringing that back.
More to come, and I'm sure there'll be other information we can share along the way.
Good.
You want me to mention Chuck?
Well, I just was going to remind or mention that when Kendra reported a couple of meetings ago that we needed to now appoint 5, that our group needs to bring 5 community member names, parents, non-district employees to that SHAC committee. So be thinking about who that might be. And I have a name already. We'll bring those to the May 27th meeting when we vote on that and approve those.
Is this posted on the website so that we could like share that to see if there are other people that maybe we don't know personally but are interested in that would be good fits?
I'm not sure if it's on the website.
Yep. So in your board Google folder, there's information about SHAC board appointments.
Okay.
We can certainly, let me talk to Kendra and see which aspects of this we can post on the website. I don't think there's anything that we can't. I'm kind of scanning through it now.
You know what the time commitment is?
Yes, so the document has the meetings listed. She's already calendared out all the meetings for 21, 22. So thank you, Kendra. So it's at 6, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 meetings for the year. Yeah. They usually run about an hour, hour and a half.
All right. Any other committee reports or information?
I just remembered there was a technology meeting yesterday. They are going to be requesting that some of the laptops be brought back for certain grade levels. I think it was high school and then elementary virtual students. And there's going to be 2 dates posted, and they really want us to try to do whatever we can to get the word out so that we can gather back those laptops. So I'll let you know when they post that.
Yeah. I know David's working closely with our communications department and getting that out. Yeah. We'll do it every possible to help though.
And he sent to principals information for them to send out to all their kids too.
Yes.
Perfect.
All right. So next then is the consideration and action with respect to the canvassing of the votes. This is usually we have a special meeting for this, but it just so happened to work out that we could do this all together. So in your board book, it shows the results, the summary of the results, if you need to look over that. And then I just have a declaration to read. So when you guys are ready, let me know. Okay. So I certified that the figures on the tally sheets correspond with the figures on the returns. And I witnessed on the 13th of May of 2021. So just for the public, we'll be swearing in our 2 new members at our next meeting on May 27th. All right. Next up, we have, you guys saw the information items. If you want to just take a look at those, they're nothing but some things that we thought you guys would be interested in.
And we've got Jennifer Ashman Porter and Meredith Roddy are online in case there's any questions about the summer school plan, or any of the data regarding our monitoring of our seniors from 2019, 2020. As far as the ESSER plans updates that are on there, I just wanted you all to have eyes. That particular plan will bring a formal, the final plan to you for at the May 27th meeting for approval.
And I love the, I don't know who was part of that, the branding of the CTE stuff. That is awesome.
It's pretty exciting.
There were lots of students and teachers even had some input. So a lot of.
That's even better. Those look great.
That looks really nice.
I actually got to hear the summer school plan about a month ago, I guess, whenever I attended the task force back to school. What does 21, 22 look like? So it's a great plan. They have some really, if you guys get a chance or if you haven't yet, some really fun ways, creative ways to just get people familiar with different parts of our district, you know, middle schoolers coming to high school, some fun things like that. So if you haven't already, get a chance to look through their plans.
We're really trying to push this as summer learning, not summer school, but just summer learning opportunities, and try to get away from that negative stigma of summer school. It's really about enrichment and trying to get ready for August of 21.
Can we ask questions about this?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Can we get a kind of an overview of what the summer counseling is? I think that is the way it's described. I'm not quite sure if that's open to just anybody or specific students enroll for that.
Talking about the June 2nd through July 1st thing.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit, and I know Jen and her counselors have been working behind the scenes on what this might look like. Never done this before. Essentially, we start with this premise that we know that a lot of students have experienced trauma. Some kids will be in person for the very first time all year at summer school, in fact. And we thought, well, we should probably be ready for that. And we hired a couple of counselors who are going to be at the campuses. Independent of that, we also know the counselors know their kids. And so they're talking with their colleagues. So what students coming to summer school are the students that we've been working with and that you have groups with on a regular basis already that we should continue working with while we have them in summer school. And so from that, I turned it over to Ms. Ashman Porter and the 2 summer school counselors. And I keep saying 2 summer school counselors because
summer learning counselors.
Because the 2 summer learning counselors we actually have to hire because they're off contract, because they're elementary. The high school counselors are on duty. And so they're already a part of this because their contract extends on into June and the lead counselor extends all the way through. So it's kind of a misnomer, but we have counselors at all campuses.
Jen, is there anything you want to add to what you all been working on for the counselors?
I think you covered it quite well. Basically, we'll be prepared for individual counseling as needed. Sorry about that. we'll be prepared to host small groups. And then of course, responsive services, and we'll look at guidance as appropriate with when kids get in the building. Yeah.
I love the idea of doing the small groups and the counseling sessions themselves, like as part of the scheduled activities. I think that is awesome. So thank you all for making that a priority.
Do we have a time frame? Like, does it start at 8 o'clock and to 12? What is the time frame for the summer learning?
Summer learning depends. Elementary, so there's 3 times, I guess you could say. So you have the regular Reach for Success Academy Elementary, which is like 7:30 to 12, I think, right about there. Then you have the secondary, which is 8:45 to 12:45. And then bilingual ESL, which is a required program from the state, and you have a certain number of hours. It has a different time. So it goes from 7:30 to 2:30, I think, is what I think off the top of my head.
And the kids, we're feeding all the kids. So they get breakfast and they get lunch while they're there.
Transportation as well?
Transportation, yes.
Imagine, are we going to have like the Y at the 2 elementary summer schools for after session care? Or?
Actually, no, we actually have them at Veterans Hill. Having YMCA at the summer school site is pretty tough.
Yeah.
There's overlap and kids get mixed up and parents get mixed up. So we've learned to try to put them in a separate place. But we have we're building bus routes for parents who need their child to go from summer school to Veterans Hill so that they can continue in the program. Something some of the parents have requested of us, and Henry and his team figured out how to build some of the routes. Makes it pretty easy because most of them are curly. So you just go down the street, drop them off and keep going.
Yeah. Awesome. That's great.
I love so much how you guys always work together, you know, when you have something going on and, you know, Henry comes in and says, let's figure out how to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I mean, I want to say that's unique. I'm sure it's not unique.
Henry enjoys it when I send him problems.
If, however, board members, you hear from parents concerned about maybe hardships in accessing the Y, they have scholarships and they want us, and we're letting parents know they're getting some of these federal dollars. And so it's possible that a lot of our parents that need after school program, if that's the carrot to get them into summer school, because they know they have another spot that will take the kid for half a day. The Y has some generous scholarships available. So if you hear something that we might not catch, please let the parents know.
That's awesome. I don't know if you guys saw the last slide. I love that this so much. Hutto ISD inspires excellence in academics, character, and community. And then every student, every day. How awesome is that to know that? All right. Any other questions? You guys get a chance to look at the ESSER fund update? Any questions about that?
And would there be any value in sharing any of that, or you want to?
No, please, you're welcome to share it. As a matter of fact, it's a preliminary plan. Dr. Sermani and I have a DAC meeting on Monday with our District Advisory Council. On Tuesday, we have a meeting with all of our PTA officers from around the district. We're going to share the plan. Todd is helping us get a unique email for just the ESSER funds, just like we have a unique email for the coronavirus question. So we're going to put that out with a link to the email for comments and feedback, because we're required to get feedback. So if you look at the ESSER funds, one of the big ticket items is creating that additional, one of the #1 requests from our teachers when we met with the task force, I know Billy's nodding, is the planning time. And so one of the issues that Dr. Sermani and I wanted to make sure that we didn't get into with the calendar was adding additional planning days. We know that they're needed, but adding them in the calendar creates a hardship for the families, right? Because if you reduce instructional days, then families they've got to figure out what to do with childcare. So we have been after this for several years, trying to figure out how to embed the planning time during the school day. And it's a win-win. So part of what we do with adding by hiring 7 teachers and 7 aides at the elementary level is that you create that additional planning time for the teachers, and you create an opportunity for us to teach the technology teaks that we need to teach through the technology plan. And so again, it's a win-win. It's a really good way to leverage these funds because it's something that we've been wanting to do. But in either case, we require public feedback. So we want to get this plan out and have people just cull through it, ask questions, and really, take a look, challenge us to think about what the long-term impact of these efforts are going to be, and then how we sustain it after the money runs out, because it's a 2-year funding grant.
Well, I think research shows that really structured, planned, shared planning time is critical. And that's where you get your biggest bang for your buck, because teachers get an opportunity to say, hey, I was teaching this concept, you taught this concept, this is what my numbers look like, yours look really good, tell me what you did. And so really building on each other's instructional practices. So I love, especially at elementary, where that time is so critical. Like, we don't want our kids to slip behind, and this is a concerted, directed, intentional effort to give that time to our teachers. So I think that's a really great component of it.
Are the funds we're receiving kind of the estimate that we have for the cost?
Yes, sir. So our total grant amount is $2.8 million. So we get the first 1.8, the first round, and then the additional 900,000, the extra million, the third round, so to speak. So we have some time. We're able to get enough money to launch this and then sustain it for year 2.
So will we develop a different function to kind of keep up with the money?
Yes, Glenn will be able to track. We're going to have to track that money somehow. Yes.
I imagine the state would require it, right? Because you'd have to report in how you use it.
Yes, and then record definitely impact on student outcomes, performance. Yes. And you can see the other pieces there on mental health, increasing the intervention services. So I think we covered all the bases, all of our needs, with planning time for teachers, enrichment for our kids, mental health services, looking at expanding our parent and family engagement and the outreach. Both Mr. De Leon and Ms. Alvarez have done an exceptional job. And I think another set of hands there would just continue to expand those efforts in reaching out to our families.
This looks really good. I mean, there's a lot of subjects here, a lot of areas that are critical to us. And with that expansion of funds and services, it's a big difference.
Well, and I think it really, again, it speaks to the things that we know to be true. We know that with the loss of instructional time, especially last year, everybody was doing the best that they could, but we know that that was not the same level of instruction. And so really addressing that through the additional planning time and also making sure our students are a lot more tech savvy, because that is a critical skill. So if you had a family who was not technology savvy, it was very hard for them to access that, paired with, again, that mental health piece. I think that's really critical. And this is a plan that I'm proud of. So kudos to you all for prioritizing those things.
Thank you. Our principals did a lot of work at our last cabinet meeting, and we brought in a smaller subset of the principals this Monday, cleaned it up some more. So it's been through several renditions. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's important too to recognize, like, we can sit here and notice like the level of, instruction wasn't necessarily what we would hope for. I think that the teachers recognize that too, and take that to heart, and take, so.
And I think now this year that every teacher has gotten more comfortable with technology, and now we can kind of take it to the next level. So I hope that professional development would be sort of a little bit easier to start, bringing in and implementing now that they have that comfort level.
Good.
Anything else? All right. Just making a note that it's 6:30 and we have like 4 items left, so.
I mean, does that mean
That means we have a lot of time to talk about the next 4 items.
Because we're here until 10 o'clock, Philip. You.
Okay, in your folders, you got a copy of the board self-assessment. You know, we got those results about a month ago. And so Terrence Morgan and myself with Dr. Thomas met and we picked out the top. If you remember the chart that Orrin and David showed us, there were some yellow highlights which showed the greatest gap in our scoring. So we took all of those yellow marks and kind of looked at them and talked about, you know, what we thought about those. James and Amy get copies of these. Okay.
Yes. So what you might want to keep in front of you are, you've got the BAS questioning group, the one that has the little red circles, right?
It's like a week after this, I forgot what the question.
Right, right.
What did I say?
Yeah.
So the items that are circled are the ones that both Orrin and David, yes. David told us that we should focus on first.
Which were all the yellow highlights.
Yeah, all the yellow highlights. So when the 3 of us met, we took some note, we had some discussion. And so the other form I'd like for you to have in front is the one with the orange bars. Because those are the kind of the recommendations that the 3 of us came up with as far as how to possibly address it. So for example, question 6, orientation programs for new board members specifically include a segment about the organization's history and traditions. So the recommended follow-up action is that Todd and I and Linda will be more intentional about building a segment on the district's history and traditions with a new board orientation. So beginning with Mr. Matlock and Mrs. English, who happen to be sitting here with us, when we do their board orientation, one of the pieces that we had not included in the orientation before had been just a segment, because we assume that everybody knows the history and the traditions because if they've been here. So we'll be more intentional about pointing those out. But again, so this is how we addressed all of these. You can kind of read through all the others on your own. But I guess part of what we want to do tonight is kind of add to that thinking in case you all have any other suggestions for these particular items.
Right, because these are just what our group came up with as identifying. Some of them were like, oh, that makes sense. Of course, you know, that would be true because something simple. But then some were, you know, a little more thought-provoking. Like number 42, there have been occasions when the board itself has acted in ways inconsistent with the organization's deepest values. I think, you know, we talked about like after our summer leadership or after any conference, you know, building in time, which these meetings are perfect for that, to kind of debrief and refocus each time, like what are our district's beliefs? What are our board beliefs? You know, making sure that we all know what those are and that we're all coming from the same definition and understanding of those as we're, this ties, if you guys got to read your chapter, I'm not going to call you out if you didn't, but you'll know, but this ties directly into what we talked about or what chapter 2 is about. In the manner section of that chapter. So we just talked about building in times where we can come together and, you know, debrief about what we learned at the conference. You'll get so overwhelmed with information at all the workshops you go to, and then you leave there and it's like, okay, now what? Then you forget about them 2 weeks later. And so
I think too, like when you're in those sessions though, like you get some really interesting aha moments, and being able to immediately talk with your colleagues about that, it helps you get a greater understanding of what it was that you heard. And is this something that we might want to apply to our district? So I think that time to visit about the learning is really critical. That's why I love that we're doing this book study, because we're doing that together.
And building in time to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is to try to sit at a table that's not just you know, your fellow members, because you can get a lot. I probably got more good information from other board members. And some of it was like, I don't want to do that, you know, but I mean, some of it's like good ideas too, you know, that interaction with other board members was like valuable to me at the conference.
So just so I understand, these are the things where we had the greatest like range on, like half of us said definitely, and the other half maybe said not a way. So when are we going to look at the things where we all said like that's an issue? Because those seem really important, right?
Well, after we go through these, then we will keep going through questions. You know, next time we meet, we'll add the next set of questions that we look at. So by the time we'll get through all of the questions in time for then James and Amy to fill out the survey next with us and see where we've come.
And we'll be able to discuss, like, perhaps one of the things, if you all remember what Oren had said, was there may just be a misunderstanding in the item itself. And so being able to talk through those, we may have just misunderstood the item.
So 26 and 38, we thought were kind of similar. And never receiving feedback on my performance as a board member and or participated in discussions about the effectiveness of our performance. And so one of the things I learned at a workshop I recently took was the idea of doing just quick, brief after meeting reviews and having like a basic set of questions that says, you know, did we adhere to the norms? Did we, you know, whatever we decide those are, that would help us as a group too with our performance. And are we staying true to the agenda? Are we doing all the things that we said we would do?
We had talked about doing that as like regularly, routinely, so that let's say there was a meeting where things went a little bit left. If we only do it in those situations, we're going to feel like put on the spot. But if it's part of our routine, like we're constantly reflecting, if there's a day where you're a little bit in your feelings, it's not going to come across as you're targeting me personally. It truly is. This is a reflective activity that we're all going to do because we're committed to it.
So what I had suggested, one of the things that we do in cabinet, Dr. Sermani, after every cabinet meeting, there's a survey that we fill out. It always builds in a fun question too, just to make sure you're paying attention. But so I can have, if you all are good, like with these two basic questions, or if you want to suggest others, I can have Linda create that Google survey. And at the end of every meeting, she'll just send it out. It'll hit your email and you can just fill out, it's 1 or 2 questions. You hit them and you submit them, and then she can compile the results.
And I think it's important too, to say that if we're going to do that, that it's not just a survey and it's done, and, you know, that we have follow-up discussion about if there's a need to, you know, to be able to talk through that.
I mean, unless anyone's opposed and unless this goes against Open Meetings Act, I actually kind of would like in that last little bit, we're talking about board calendar, where we do a quick thumbs up or thumbs down or sideways or something. And if we notice that there's non-congruence, then we have a quick, all right, so what do we need to do next time? Because I think during the survey is a very passive activity. Will we always come back and revisit it? And by the time we get back to revisit it, that window of opportunity to change has already gone by. So something to think about. If everyone is willing to be vulnerable and do that as a team, I think that that's another way that we can build trust with each other too.
And we can put it in as part of the agenda, like before adjournment, do a quick check.
And we just ask the same 2 questions. Philip is all in. He thinks it's a great idea.
It's great. It is a great idea, I think. I really do. Because you address it right then, right? Doesn't view
the important part.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you don't walk away with a misunderstanding.
Right.
And not that we can't every now and then do maybe a little more in-depth survey just to, you know, maybe where people feel a little more comfortable if they need to say something.
I think whatever works for us, the survey works for the cabinet. That was just a suggestion, but if you want immediate feedback, we can do that too. Yep.
And then the board does not allocate organizational funds for the purpose of education and development. That was one of the ones that we thought we just did a bad job of communicating that, especially since we didn't get to go to in-person conferences this time, to make everybody aware that TASB offers a wealth of online workshops and webinars and that kind of thing. So that's all available to us always. And if you refer back to the board operating procedures, we're allocated a certain amount towards our, some of the workshops that TASB offers are free.
Mhm.
A lot of them are free. And if there's ever a need to pay for one, you would just need to contact Linda. And so that is available, and we just did a bad job of communicating that.
Is this one worth like asking if there was a misunderstanding, or did anybody have any questions about that one?
No, that one surprised me too.
Yeah.
For answering that one.
I don't either. Do not.
But I do know that when I've asked to go to a training, it's been, paid for. So
Mhm.
I don't have any concern about it.
Okay. Number 43, the board relies on natural emergence of leaders rather than trying explicitly to cultivate future leaders for the board. I think two things. When you're talking about leaders, HNU does a good job of training up potential leaders, obviously. But also another one of the things that I had learned, and really we've talked about a lot of times, is especially like the board officers, you sit in a position and somebody new becomes president. It's like, all right, what do I do? What, you know what I mean? There's just things that you don't know. How do you set the agenda? What does that look like? And so one of the things that I was suggesting is just that the president, bring people alongside, every now and then. I can only speak for myself right now, inviting one of you guys to join Dr. Thomas and I when we set the agenda. So you see how that works, like what kind of questions, how we talk through things, and just so everybody has a working knowledge of what that looks like, and, people can be more prepared. I also, I think we talked about this, like the idea of maybe doing a Robert's Rules of Order training. I know those big, large books are up on our spots up there. And so if anybody has free time and wants to do some fun reading, you can, but.
I mean, luckily, we've always had a pretty cohesive board, so, we could kind of work through it. But if it's ever not a cohesive board, I mean,
and that we're following the true,
Yeah.
I like the idea. I see it noted here about using the hands up feature in board book.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that's a great idea, because then you don't have to, I just interrupted. That's why it's a great idea.
Oh, you did it?
No, I just interrupted her.
I think that is the point of that raise your hand thing. And especially, I just remember one time, that was probably me who said that, somebody started to say something online and like 6 people jumped in and it's like, no, we can't do that. It's like, okay, hold on. Imagine how you felt if you were that person where 6 people were shouting at you that you can't speak. So just to be able to, and for us, like Philip said, it's one thing we are all pretty, able to do that. But I think just to keep the order and keep things going, that's what that feature was built in for. If you have something to say, click on the raise your hand and get acknowledged. I mean.
And Morgan, is that what you're monitoring that? Like if we.
Oh, I'm not. No, Billy is monitoring it.
We raise our hand. You do?
Yes.
Okay.
But do you have to be following you?
You have to be following the leader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And scroll ahead.
It sounds like that's an opportunity though for us to just come to alignment on that. And if we do it as a practice, when things are going well, when things aren't going well, then it's automatically, that is how we conduct business.
That's how we, yeah.
It's systems oriented. And I like a lot of these things that we're talking about because it's not reliant on us getting along, which we do.
Right.
But in the event that things aren't going well, we've already set that tone, like this is how we conduct business. I think and it's not personal. This is just how we do it.
And I don't follow the leader doesn't mean that you're scrolling through the same, like you're not having to know, that your screen isn't reflecting my screen necessarily.
I think you can click it at any spot because I'm fairly certain I'm not where Billy is.
Right.
And you're still following her.
And so when you click raise your hand, it will alert me.
You see it?
Then,
You gotta click OK, right?
Yes.
Or does it, yeah.
I think too, just as our community continues to grow and as we see turnover, I mean, even coming up, we're about to have 4 new people with less than a year. So just establishing what those best practices are, no matter what the conditions are, is helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So are we saying that we want to start using that feature or?
I'm raising my hand to answer that question. I mean, I think I think me personally, I think it would be beneficial, but certainly I'm not the decision maker. And we would have to give each other grace as we kind of make that a new habit because we've not done that before.
Well, I'm willing to try it. Yeah.
But like you said, you got 4 new members, so it's, it wouldn't be second nature to you guys, but if they learn that way,
They can train us.
That's right.
Dogs can.
That's right.
And again, remember that one of the most powerful pieces of our work is our agenda. So anytime you want to be, we finalize every Monday before a board meeting at 3:30 in my office. And if you can't come physically, if you let me know that you want to be a part of that process, we can Zoom you in or send you a calendar invite. We just have to remember we can't have more than 3 people.
Day at 3:30.
Every Monday at 3:30.
Hope y'all set a long one for next.
Any other thoughts or questions so far? So number 5, our board explicitly examines the downside or possible pitfalls of any important decision it is about to make. I think that was one of our norms, right? Asking the question here in the meeting instead of having questions. Kind of address that. And then just also being able to take ownership when we miss the mark on something and that we commit to talking that through. And we talked about, you guys helped me remember, we talked a lot about, whenever there's something that comes up that we talk through, okay, what are the possible pitfalls that could, that we're not thinking about? What are those?
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? Just being able to, and we really addressed a lot of this with our norms, being able to have those discussions and address those things and knowing that it's not personal. We're believing positive intent, just trying to refer back to those, that's what we're called to do is ask hard questions and work through, difficult circumstances and stuff that we're willing to do that.
Well, you just went into 47.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. And I think this has been a big issue for us, for the board, right? That recommendations from the administration are usually accepted with little questioning in board meetings. So, yeah.
Yeah, again, we talked about that idea that we feel comfortable enough to ask questions and not afraid that we might hurt someone's feelings or cause, conflict, just knowing that, if you have the best of intentions and we're believing positive intent about in the discussion, then, we're willing to do that work. Any questions on that? So number 7, the board is more involved in trying to put out fires than in preparing for the future. I feel like personally, the work of the governance core that we're doing is starting to set that pace for us, right? We're refocusing our work and what do you guys think?
I know chapter 2 said this exact thing, that like we need to be the helicopter, not on the line fighting the fire. So it just ties directly to that.
Yeah.
And I think we brought up too about the committees and making sure that we bring that information back to the board. So because we may have to make an action item, like you say here.
Yeah, so how critical the committee work is when we go there, you know, when we get assigned or volunteer or whatever for the committees that we go, that we are intentional about going and listening, and because really our role for the most part is to be the transfer of information. You get that since we all can't go to all of the committee meetings, that if you were assigned to one and you can't go, that you're willing to ask someone else to take your place, or, you know, that you're coming back and sharing that information so we all know, you know, the information, especially as it relates, like Terrence said, to a decision that we have to make.
I love that quote in the governance core about the superintendent being mindful of not giving board members the fire hose.
Right.
Chapter 2 was good.
Yeah,
It was.
At least once a year, this board asks that the executive director, superintendent, articulate her vision for the future and strategies to realize that vision. So we talked a lot about how the district improvement plan, how critical that is, the driving force to, and you guys will notice when we have presentations and stuff, it's always the strategic plan, I think, is tied always to it. And so we wanted to know how does the district improvement plan also tie to that as we're talking through things like that.
I think the more we can start to see the connection to everything, how does it tie back to the goals and vision that we're responsible for, that would be helpful. Because sometimes that's not always like super clear, you know?
And it's one of the reasons why we started reciting. Maybe it seems like ridiculous to some people, but one of the reasons we started reciting that our mission and vision statements before our action item meetings, just so that that's fresh, because really everything that on those agendas, you know, ties, but should tie back to our mission and vision. And so we talked also about, which is kind of true. We set the strategic plan how many years ago now? 3 years so. And then we don't really talk about it and, you know, go back to the core of what that is. So
I just, with that, I want to, let's pause here, because even if you go through even the informational items that are there
on the agenda,
every action item that the executive team member brings, they tie it to the DIP or the strategic plan. As a matter of fact, very rarely we put something in there that's not tied to the DIP or the SIP. They're really quite intentional with that. So it's just a matter of us picking up on it. I know that every presentation Dr. Shermani does, that Glenn does, that Henry does, it's tied in to the DIP and the SIP, because we're not going to bring something that's not tied to the work. And if we ever bring something that isn't, then definitely say, all right, Selena, where's the connection here to one of our goals? Because sometimes every now and then we may have something that doesn't tie specifically to a goal, but that's one of the things that we hold ourselves.
It is a plan that's 3 years old, right? Something new could come up, like a coronavirus or something.
Right.
You know.
Yes, like the coronavirus.
I know example. Personally, when you see it though at that micro level, like it ties to this one thing. Like you don't see the high up, like, okay, well, what thing have we not touched on? Like I can't see progress toward everything. Like I'm seeing it in isolation.
Along with that same thing, I'm wondering if maybe it would be useful do you guys remember how we used to have the facilities plan and you could see like where those things were supposed to be addressed, and so you could see like the roadmap of that. I wonder if it would be beneficial to take the strategic plan, even though parts of it are old, where we can actually start actively looking at it as we're participating in the meeting, like having it laminated, I think would be, for me, visually super powerful.
You're not saying like a Gantt chart, like where you're at on something, right? You're not saying that, right?
No, that's a little bit different, right? Because that's like project management.
Yeah, I mean, but it shows your progress of where you're at on. So you're not saying that, you're just saying the actual.
Better idea.
Yeah.
Open to.
I mean, occasionally that would be helpful.
Yeah. And Dr. Thomas, if you guys remember, she did like go through the strategic plan to highlight what we've done already, what's, not can be taken off, but what's done. And so if you guys want that printed in our folder,
How often is that typically done?
Well,
this was just the first time we did it. So
it was I included that as part of my evaluation back in January. But again, that's probably one of those key pieces that could be part of this dashboard that we're trying to create, right? Putting in the strategic plan and putting each of the components with a date, because some of those items in the strategic plan are not necessarily ever going to be completed because they're ongoing. For example, having every child, read on grade level by 3rd, 5th, 8th, and 10th grade, right? Those are checkpoints that we've got to monitor on an annual basis. So there's some that are ongoing, some that once we put into action, they become part of the operational system, they become part of the system. And that's essentially what we want. So yes, I can definitely, I'll take that same document and put it on some sort of a dashboard so you see it.
Anything else?
I have my hand up.
Sometimes it goes away.
But does it? Okay. So, and I'm willing to pay for this myself, but if it could be printed in like a placemat size laminated, and I would just have my little Sharpie, and as we discuss things, I can mark it off. I feel like it would make me more accountable and engaging with it. And that way you don't have to continuously print it out, if that makes sense.
You just want to color.
I do. Yeah, I need to doodle.
Felix?
For me, some of the things that have really helped getting on board and kind of getting up to speed is the meetings that I have with you personally. Because some of the things that we touch on here are at a level that it has to be a little bit faster. But when we have the one-on-one conversation that you have with everyone, it's a very useful moment to be able to understand different pieces that work together. So that's a good moment for all of us.
But we can certainly put it, because like we have placemats here on the dais with the Robert's Rules of Order. We could definitely put that. Might even put the facilities plan on the other side.
That's a great idea. Henry would love that.
No, well, we used to, when I first got here, we had one of those, I remember Connie would pull it out all the time when we met to see where we were with the facilities management plan. Yeah.
All right, so like I said, we will take the next set of questions and share if we want to. I think the green questions were the questions that were kind of, I believe if I remember right, were consistent in the scoring. So we'll take those next set of questions and go through them and come back and do the same thing. And so I think, this was really helpful and I love how much this tied into our book that we're doing too, that we talked about. So the next thing, if you guys remember, we talked a couple of meetings ago about, I think it was important in a meeting that we have some community input. And so Dr. Thomas had asked us to send her questions that we wanted to see, but it was apparent that a couple of us at least missed something somehow, and we weren't really sending the right questions. So thought instead of just emailing those questions in, we could kind of talk about what is it that we as a group wanted to know from the community, what was critical for us to know.
I think one question that might be critical to know would be like how often they access our facilities in the last 2 years or some, that includes information prior to COVID. Because I think there are a lot of community members that are very invested in what we're doing and they understand that the impact to the community, but they don't necessarily have kids in the schools, or they don't have grandkids in the schools, but their engagement is just as important.
Yeah, and along the same lines, like, do they know how to get involved as like a volunteer or a mentor or something like that?
What else?
I'd love to be able to see them voice their opinion to the appropriate person versus throwing it all on Facebook, you know?
Do they know who to contact?
Who to contact, yeah.
That's a great question. Have they contacted campus level staff? Have they contacted district level staff?
And then maybe how do they like to stay informed? Like through social media? Do they prefer like an email? Should we put it in the community impact, you know?
And that's a tough one because if you look at our community pages, I mean, heck, Sienna has, I think, 10 of them already, and that neighborhood's only 4.5 years old. It's just difficult.
But that's got to be, you kind of got to list them, right? And say, which one of these do you prefer? Is that what you're saying on the question?
Well, I just mean, like, are you going on Facebook or Twitter? Or do you want an email sent to you on a, quarterly basis? Or would you prefer the newspaper or mailing? Like, how do they prefer to get information and updates?
Agreed, but you don't do a fill in the blank question. You list all of the things and.
Yeah, but I wouldn't get down to like such a discrete level that we're like listing out pages. It's just like in general.
Yeah, so we want to know what the preferred method of communication is.
Okay.
Yeah.
But when we do the survey, do we have them fill in their preferred and then you have to read them all?
Or do you say printed material?
Yeah.
Electronic?
Yeah.
You generally say like rank your top 3 or 4, right? Like email, text.
But you list them and let them pick?
Yeah.
Or do you let them write
with a blank? You could have other.
Well, and then you can leave one that's other.
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
where they can fill in, like if they have something we haven't thought about.
Right. TikTok.
You know, I told Dr. Thomas this past Saturday that I was extremely happy to see the videos that you guys put out this past week on the recruitment.
Aren't those neat? I love those.
Ones that we need to continue doing. I mean, we need to really beat our public with that stuff because there's a lot of good stuff that we're doing. They just don't know about it. It's got to be one of these videos that really involve the emotions of people. People don't make decisions on logic. We're human beings. We're emotional. The more emotion we can put in there, the better information we can really get to them. So did you create those?
Actually, no, that was a outside organization that did that one.
I was giving you credit already.
No, I wish I could take.
That was Lindsay.
I can't take credit for anything.
In the HR, she's really today. I don't know if you've seen them yet. She's launched she's doing a spotlight on our retirees.
Don't go on Facebook right now and look at them.
And alumni that are back working in the industry. It's really nice.
That is
Why?
Gold badges.
I just say don't go on Facebook.
Oh, don't go. Oh, that's right. I go, why?
Right, but we've done. Okay. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah, if you see this first spotlight on alumni, you'll like it.
Yeah.
Okay. What other things and you guys remind me what prompted the need for, or that we felt like there was a need for community input?
Because
behind a certain specific discussion.
Well, it was all about the taxes. Well, if I remember correctly, you had asked, or someone did, I know, because I had taken it to Lisa about surveying the community and community members specifically that are not parents, because our parents, they get our emails and they get our information, but our goal behind this community survey is to reach out to people who don't necessarily have children in our schools. And we envision having QR codes throughout the downtown, at the coffee shop, at Starbucks, where people, if they see Hutto ISD wants to hear from you, where they could download that survey and fill it out. Because we can put it out on Facebook and we can send it out to our parents and say, please share this link with your neighbor. Please share this link with someone who doesn't have children in our schools. We'll figure out a way to get the survey out. But I think this was our effort to reach community members who don't hear from us on a regular basis.
Like they might have kids in charter schools or.
Yeah, I think I would like to know what their perception of the district is. Like, would you recommend that your friend move here and go to the schools? Like, as an outside community member, what is their perception of the district? If it's our goal to be the premier place in education, we're relying on all of those people to think that.
Are we allowed to ask people that are in the room in the audience what questions they might want to ask? Nope. All right.
But they can always submit them to us afterwards or send us. Yeah.
And so just to be clear, so we know we're talking about the same audience. These questions would go out to people. I mean, you go out to the community, but specifically people that don't have connection to the district.
Yeah, I thought that was our intent, to try to reach
yes,
people that don't have children in our schools, but who vote yeah. At school board elections, who vote at bond elections.
Well, and I refer to it as connecting with the disconnected.
Right.
Because, but in all honesty, the only true effective way we can do that is through direct mail.
Yeah, do a mail out.
Because we can mail something to every address in Hutto, but that's the only way we know. We know we can reach people.
But the only problem
Sorry,
with that is
hold on a second. Philip raised his hand.
I did, and Todd jumped right over top of me.
Sorry.
Can't see the hand.
So, are we, no, I forgot my question.
All right, Todd, as you were.
So we're saying we want the people that have no kids in the district, but what we're doing is we're trying to get everybody in the district, right? Kids, I mean, because I don't know how you segregate,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Really everybody, but yeah.
I mean, but with that, we do still want the ones.
And that'll be probably one of the questions that we ask. Do you have children in the district? So that we can disaggregate the information. Yep.
if we could target that a little bit better, because mass mail in that fashion with a 2% or less than a 2% response is a waste of money. It's just throwing money out. But if we could target that to where we don't mail to people that we know kids are in school and just target those people that don't, that would be probably a better selection.
I think the challenge with that is that the labor intensity of that is so much harder. So like when you do the direct mail through the post office, they already have like their regions mapped out, and you just click, I want to send to this region, this region, this region.
And I think you want even the ones with kids in schools opinion too. You want them to answer the survey too. I think you just want to be able to, like you said, that's probably one of the questions. Do you have kids in the district or not? So once you get the aggregate data, then you can separate it by, okay, these answers were people with kids, these answers were people without kids.
You ask different questions.
I want to welcome Connie to the.
But in that case, you really have to understand that you have to target more than one type of response. Mail out by itself is not going to be true.
No. And it wouldn't just be the mail out by itself. It would also be on Facebook. Right. It would be emailed out to all of our parents. But we don't know what we don't know, or we don't know who we don't know, right? And so like there are people out there that we have no connection to through email or anything else. And all we can do is basically send a generic resident at, this address, and please help us by filling out the survey. And a lot of those are going to be parents. And for some of those, maybe they got the email from us, but they didn't do it. Well, maybe the postcard comes. Oh, that's a reminder. I need to do that. So I think we're killing a bunch of birds with one stone. But yes, it wouldn't be just the postcard, but we know that's one way we can hit people that we don't have any other connection to.
I do like the idea of the QR code because you put it in highly trafficked areas, restaurants, coffee shops, and you can find people that might not respond any other way. Everybody's got a phone nowadays.
Well, and I think what would be an interesting idea is if we partner with HEF, like their board members, and I would say I would do this. So if we printed the QR code on like a yard sign, people put them in their front yard. And as people are walking around, that's another way that they might access it.
You would go in somebody's yard and scan your QR code.
I'm not gonna have it up on my porch, but I will put it
Up by the street.
Right on the edge.
Yeah, but if it's printed on a yard sign, you can probably scan it from
I will say,
sidewalk.
COVID has made QR codes a lot more.
I love.
Oh, yeah.
People are a lot more.
Menus, every menu.
Yes.
That's right. Everything's on a
I
menu.
mean, heck, we can stick a QR code on a billboard and somebody, I guess, technically.
Scan it.
Yeah. But so Hanover is very willing to help us design this survey and of course, help us with the analysis. But they wanted an idea from us. Well, what do you want to know? Because they have all sorts of banks of questions that they can pull that they have a way to analyze and give us feedback on.
I think it just needs to be much shorter than, sorry, Philip, much shorter than all the other ones that we put out.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Talking about 10 questions or less.
You got it in front of me.
Mr. Boutwell, and then.
So can we offer something?
What? What do you mean?
Like a raffle?
Yeah, I mean, some swag or something, just say with the completed survey, your name goes into for.
A ticket to the football game.
You know what? It could be like a couple of seats to the football game, just say all the names go into a pot for.
I think seems like if HEF donated something, possibly.
We can't, right?
Right, we can't.
We'll figure something out.
Yeah.
Well, I think something like football tickets we could, because that's not a gift of public funds, because that's not, I mean, tickets are not.
We look to our public fund police.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, you can give those away.
Yeah.
I know of one district that did a QR code. This was before the last bond election. And I'm sorry if I'm not allowed to talk. I'm just going to throw this out. You walk into a coffee shop that was in that town, take a survey and get a free cup of coffee on us. And it was to assess the palatability of the different bond. It was a survey up front and then a follow-up survey afterwards to see whether the trend in how voters were getting voter information and how they were connecting their tax dollars, whether they had kids in school or not. And it was funded through private sources as opposed to through the PAC committee, as opposed through using school district dollars to buy somebody's information. But you're not promoting a bond at this time, but I'm wondering if you use some dollars to work with a local community to get somebody to do a survey, and then in exchange you get a cup of coffee on the east side.
Because I know like
like HEF, like you said.
Yeah. Like the deal we did to give the parents could give their kid their diploma for the
FAFSA.
FAFSA, that was like.
Oh.
I mean, it was.
Everybody was filling out their FAFSA.
Yeah, I mean.
Charge for that?
No.
It was, one of those deals where I think if we can offer something, and plug it, fill this survey out, have a chance to win something.
Kara?
So I can think of 3 more things just real quick for the survey. I'd like to know if they feel that we're being good stewards of their tax dollars. Are they informed with how their tax dollars are being used? And then also just an opportunity for them to give any feedback in general, and then ask questions. Just an open spot for them to be able to put their own questions for us.
And I think another good question might be like, we could list the last 3 major initiatives or the last 3 big facility improvements that we've done to see like which of these they felt like was the most beneficial, or if they even knew about them.
How
or 5
for you about these.
When will we target this information going out?
We haven't looked at a timeline yet, but more than likely over the summer. Because it's community. And we'll probably have a large window, probably you have a good month for people to be able to respond. Because normally other surveys, we give a 2-week window, but for this one, I think you're gonna have to go a little bit longer.
With the stadium going up and getting close to being completed,
Mhm.
that we're gonna get a lot of comments on that.
Mhm.
I believe you're right.
Thank you all so much. If you think of anything else as you drive home, please just
Send your
shoot
your
it.
phone and put a QR code in the response.
I do like that. That's.
All right. Anything else on does that give you guys enough information?
I think
to get
so.
that going?
Right, Lisa, do you think you have enough, Lisa?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So the last thing is our chapter 2 book discussion.
ELT, if y'all need to run home, you can at this time if you want to.
And
You're welcome to stay either way.
Morgan, Terrence had to step out at 7:03. You didn't put that on your attendance. So if you guys want to sign into your email and go to the Google Drive, I think everybody here gave their input. The Google Drive.
If you didn't, she promised.
Henry, you're miss all the good stuff.
Hmm?
I can stay if you need me to, personally.
Just
Make sure you put your responses in the Google Doc.
I'm not gonna call you out if you didn't read the chapter, but. Okay. Philip, do you want to lead? These were your questions or your thoughts.
Signing in.
We're gonna do popcorn reading.
What?
Teacher joke. You can tell who the teacher.
Popcorn meeting?
Reading. Like you read a little bit and you call them.
There's
I don't even remember my password now.
Google Docs.
in the Google Drive of your ISD email.
That's wrong.
You go to, yeah, click on Drive.
Oh, Drive, that's right.
And then it should be in recent.
I've been up too long today.
Right there.
Russell created that password for me.
Been here early this morning.
Wow.
13 years ago.
Something like that. Couldn't remember response.
Oh, good for you. That's commitment.
Google Drive. This is why I had Billy fill this out for me because I didn't know how to get here.
While Philip is pulling that up, I thought of another really interesting book study. I know that we're not anywhere close done with this one, but another one is called The Thin Book of Trust. It is very thin.
I think Connie's friend wrote that book.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Connie's still on here.
Yes.
Didn't your friend write that book?
We can't interact with the public.
Okay.
No. Are you up there, Philip?
I am. Okay, so I know this is the only reason Connie signed on too, to make sure I did my.
She's gonna critique your.
No, she's snickering right now. Okay, so I'll go ahead and tell you right now, when Billy told me last week or whatever, Philip, you can take chapter 2. I was like, are you serious? I got a meeting and a half, but I wish I'd have read this chapter 13 years ago. I mean, it was just, it was really good, you know, and I'm like, you know, okay, no, there's not going to be a next time. If I were ever on a board again, this is something you really need, right? There were so many things I highlighted and so many things, you know, but the two things I kind of come away with was if you want someone or some entity like a board to feel like they own a course of action, a product, or a decision of anything. You must get them involved in generating or shaping that course, product, or decision rather than merely reacting to your best thinking. I felt that one struck a chord to me, and the other one was this. Is that right? The single.
That's the second one.
The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that's taken place. And I thought that illuminated to me a lot of times too, because I feel like so many times I tell Dr. Thomas what I need, but I don't feel like I stay until she really understands what I need. You know, I just say I need this, and she kind of goes off and she thinks she knows what I need, but it's not really, you know, I don't stress to myself or her enough, this is what I'm thinking, you know, whatever, you know, and I think I do a disservice sometimes to her by just kind of throwing out, hey, I want this, you know, and then when it comes back and it's not what I wanted, you know, I was like, you know what, you really didn't explain yourself enough for her to know what you needed, you know. So I think if I could share anything with everybody, it would be that, you know, have the conversation long enough to say, no, this is what I'm looking for, you know, and she may say, yeah, or whatever, but say, no, really, you know, I need this, this, and this, you know, so I think.
So that idea of this is what I'm saying, and then this is what I heard you say.
Right, yeah.
Clear is kind, Brene Brown.
Huh?
Clear is kind, that's a philosophy that she says, like.
And to be unclear is unkind.
Yeah. Because I do think a lot of times I just say, I kind of want, you know, I need this, you know, or whatever. And it's not clear to anybody. I mean, it was Henry with the, you know, or Glenn or anybody, you know, and I think I've done a disservice to them sometimes by not being.
Seeing it through.
Yeah.
And then like when I think David said this in our last, when we were going over the results, the two most critical pieces to effective, and I added premier, but I spelled that wrong. Teams is communication and trust. So it goes along with what you're saying, Philip, that communication is critical.
But I mean, I highlighted so much more in that chapter that it was like.
So we're kind of on that second point. Let's just finish up that and then we'll go back up to the first point. What do you guys have to add for that?
Well, one of the things that I felt like if this is true, effective two-way communication, really walking away feeling like you have a clear understanding of like what your viewpoint is, what my viewpoint is. We may not walk away more aligned, but we at least walk away, okay, I don't necessarily agree with you, but I get where you're coming from. I have a conceptual understanding of what it is that what you're meaning, and some more of that idea sharing. And it's not necessarily like, just because you have different viewpoints doesn't necessarily mean that you can't still, that's not an example of non-effective communication, just because we still have different opinions. And so walking away feeling like, okay, they understood what I was trying to communicate. I think that's important too, because I think sometimes because we have always been so cohesive, the times where there have been rubs, it feels off, it feels uncomfortable. And you're like, ooh, that doesn't feel good, so I'm not gonna do that anymore, you know? And so really just being brave enough to be honest with each other and knowing that if we're all coming from a place that we wanna do the right thing for our stakeholders and our kids and our teachers and the organization, then if we engage with that intent, we have to receive communication with that intent as well. And I think that takes some of that uncomfortableness out of it.
I think for myself, I just said, I want to make sure I'm focused on listening with intent to understand and making sure I ask questions to gain a better understanding, like, and even outside of this boardroom. So I want to know from a wide variety of perspectives so that I can make a good decision. I'm not quite sure how to do that. That's why I go to the table talks to hear if parents are asking questions, but there are not a lot of venues, especially this year, not with COVID, to like hear from a wide variety of people. You know, it's hard from people I know.
How about you, Felix?
I've mentioned this a few times in other meetings that we've had, but I wanted to make sure, and I always want to make sure that I understand what causes someone to vote no on a particular item we're voting on. And not that I just want to know, but it would give me comfort to know what that person is struggling with or what their pain points are and why. Maybe I overlook something that I don't understand. Mm-hmm. And so if I come to you and ask you, or if you come to me and ask me, I'll be an open book. I have no issue with that. I just want to be able to understand where we can get better and why that decision was made, so I can have a better feel for what we're doing. Other than that, I mean, this chapter was incredibly good. Mm-hmm. Char mentioned the helicopter, and kids always laugh. You're going to be a helicopter parent, Dad. Mm-hmm. But the reality was that you mentioned that first sentence that you read. That's the first thing that hit me. The next thing that hit me was the dancing from the balcony, mm-hmm. of being able to see the bird's eye view. And a lot of times we get into the schools to help out, to volunteer, whatever, and it's not our job to go fix things or pay or do things. We're not hired to do that. We're hired to lend a hand in directing the view of where we're going, the plan of where we're going. And that hit me like a bag of rocks, because it's huge.
And I think that it's important for us to recognize too that because sometimes I think maybe human nature, maybe personality, I don't know, that the bird's eye view, the high level view is important. It's necessary. Sometimes I think we have this feeling, like you just said, that we need to be like, in order to feel like we're doing a good job or doing what we were called to do or whatever, that we've got to be in it, doing it. Like we're doers, right? And just to remember that this is important work and there's value in the bird's eye view, and we need that. So to just know that just because we're not down here holding the fire hose doesn't mean that we're not doing the work that we need to do.
Some of the best work that we do, besides what we present to the public in the recorded session, is in the closed session, when we're able to discuss things that really we can open up and touch on different topics and subjects and whys and hows and whats, and that is invaluable. That moment, that 1 hour, is one of the best hours that we have in our meetings.
Well, I think it's important too, and I forgot my train of thought. What were you talking about before? That
the bird's eye view is
exactly
view in it.
That when we can say that all along, that bird's eye view is important. It's bird's eye view is very important. We need to stay here. We need to stay here. That first parent email that comes out, it's you have that sense, and it's hard because you have that sense of responsibility. These people voted for me. I need to fix this, but it's not our job to fix it. I think the best thing I learned one time from another board member at a conference was, he said, my deal is look, I can direct you to the person. I can't fix this, but I can direct you to the person who can. But it is hard not to want to go to Dr. Thomas and go, and I always I'm one of those that, I like to think things through frontwards and backwards before I make a decision most of the time too. So I'm usually one of those that'll go, take it, let's, calm down just a second. Let's see what's going on. And, and then see what's, who needs to handle this.
One of the best things I heard too is from a kindergarten teacher, like, you believe 50% of what you hear your child tell you at home, and I'll believe 50%
right.
of what they tell me at school. It's the same idea when, people come to us with something, it's usually emotional and
it's through their lens.
And it's through their lens. So, and so then what's the first thing we want to do? Turn the water hose on and start spraying. And instead of believing 50%, coming to that middle ground and saying, I can't fix this. I don't know what the answer is. I'm sorry. You know, you're in that whatever.
Right.
But here's who can help you.
And I think, you know, relating back to question one too, is that it helps us to understand the why behind decisions are made. So although we weren't involved in making the decision, nor was it our role, if we understand how that fits in with the bigger picture and our goals strategically, then we can speak to that, you know, even though we're not necessarily the ones making those decisions. I think that's important.
And I think it also helps us build trust in some of those decisions too, because you get the context of why that was the best decision. So I think it gives you confidence that we're doing the right thing when you're out in the community, because they're going to inevitably, it'll be at the most inconvenient time. Like I'm trying to run in and out of HEB and something impacted them and they really want to talk about it. And so if we get that information, I think that helps us also be better ambassadors for the district too.
You know, page 31, where it goes through the bullet points, the two things that we talk about every other meeting is it good for the kids and what's it doing in our budget? We really focus on that as a board. We continue to ask questions on those two items. I think those are the two most valuable items that we conduct in every meeting. So in front of us again and reminded.
Speaking of that list, on the last one, I put a question because it said keeping the constituents of the organization informed and up to date on the work of the organization.
What page are you on?
Sorry, 31.
31.
What role does the board play in that bullet? Is that something that the district is communicating out, or are we in any way responsible for that? Was my question.
If I can answer my thoughts on it, I think I feel like that is, you know, we're keeping our constituents informed when we are answering, you know, questions or directing them to where they need to go, or sharing, you know, like all of you guys are good about sharing things that the district is doing or posted or things like that. I don't know. What do you think?
I think anything that is about major initiatives, district improvement plan, accomplishments, anything having to do with the budget, anything of that nature, keeping constituents informed. How do you do that? You share things on social media, most definitely. I think
encourage people to participate in the surveys.
Encouraging people to come to events, attend events, or even attend board meetings. I think here pretty soon, next board meeting, we'll make a decision about even our board meetings and opening them back up again, just based on a positive, good health conditions. But yeah, that one I struggle with, because you don't want to go out and create your own information. But I think anything that we've created here together,
we help spread it.
That you help spread it, right? Anything like that document that I shared with you about the ESSER plan, that's a draft, definitely, yes, you can share that. Look, this is what the district is thinking about as far as the use of the federal funds that have been allocated to the state of Texas. And, you know, this is the district's share. When we start talking about the budget and the fact we're going to have to schedule a public workshop on the budget, inviting people to come to that, because we rarely have anyone participate with that.
But we have some big wins on that, with the bonds being refinanced and about the dollars, about being good stewards of the dollars. Besides, you know, getting our kids to the level that we want to see them at, right?
Those are the kinds of communications too, when we're out having coffee and somebody stops by to shake your hand or want to have a discussion, you know, we have an opportunity to share, depending on what the subject is. Like, yeah, did you know that we just refinanced and saved whatever? Like, those are good opportunities too, to keep people informed. Did you hear that the teachers are going to get, you know, X amount more planning time, or things like that?
I think that's why it's important to have those things, like if the district is creating those materials, it makes it very clear and concise, and we are not inadvertently either misspeaking or not using the same common language. I mean, that's the important thing, is if we rely on, there's a positive and there's a potential unintended consequence. So if the district has materials and they're creating content, then it's very easy for that messaging to stay consistent and concise, and we're all saying the same thing. Where we get into kind of a gray area is if we are having to fill in the gaps because there is something critical that the community has expressed an interest in, then we're relying on 7 different people to tell that story. And that will be 7 different stories, and it may not necessarily be the story that you want to tell. And so I think really having some clarity around that is important.
And having that place to point back to, like, go check out our website and see where we're at with the bond updates or facility updates or whatever. Just having a place to go back to confirm the information that we're sharing.
Yes.
This is on page 40. This is kind of what I was referring to. The little paragraph, it says the basic human need to overcome feelings of inadequacy encourages trustees to grab hold of issues where they can display some expertise and avoid discussion they don't understand. As they fall into the habit of dealing with organizational, financial, and procedural matters, they neglect their primary function of governing schools. So it's that idea, like, we want to fix it, we want to address it and feel like we're doing our part but really our part is, staying in that helicopter, and that is our part, and that is adequate, and that is valuable and necessary.
On page 35, Maureen DeMarco talks about the size of a district and the decisions that are made and all that goes into it. And I mean, I moved in this town in 2000 and the sign said 1,200 people. There's no way we're at 30,000. It's a lot more than that. It's a huge district with how many kids we have enrolled, and how many employees. It's just an amazing size of decision-making that has to go through the executive team. And, a lot of this stuff has to come through us. It's a lot. And it's amazing how this wheel functions, continues to turn in the right direction. And we've got to, work with that wheel a little bit. But we won't be too far away from this same situation.
Right. Which is why we're at 2 meetings. Because we have a heavy duty agenda and lots to accomplish.
That's because we get fed twice.
I think that goes back to also, it's the communication and trust that makes us the premier. And the thing about it is we have to trust the people that we have in place, that they're doing the job that we've, asked them to do based off of our goals and our strategic plan. And we have to be able to trust that, even though we don't see, we're not involved in the decisions or the, that we trust that it's happening according to the goals that we've set and the budget that we've set for that.
Yeah, and I've been on the board a long time, and I can tell you right now, there's stuff that comes up every meeting that I don't understand. It's either education talk, or sometimes it's with the finances or something. Don't be afraid to say, hey,
not know.
You're gonna have to explain that to me again, because I just, it's going here. So,
well, when you ask questions for clarity, that also, like, somebody else probably has a similar question, or maybe they completely misunderstood it. And so you're not only helping yourself, but I feel like we're all learning together through that too.
And not only that, I guarantee you there's people in the audience that, they don't know the acronyms, so when we, and to these guys, when they spit them out, it's just, and to you guys too, but, to us, we're not in education. We don't know what those acronyms mean. So.
Well, on page 42, it talked about how it's important that administration engage the board, not just present. And so it has to be sort of facilitated in a way that we feel empowered to like be a part of it. So like, it's always nice. And it happens more, I think, in these workshop type meetings, but when the presentation is more like informal, like Dr. Sormani brought people here and was like, they're here to answer your questions. You know, it seemed more like we had the chance to be sort of involved, you know,
rather than just passive
listening
and then.
Right. Because you'll notice when it's like that, there aren't a lot of questions, right? Typically.
And I guess that's where we've got to open up the floor to questions, because I'm thinking about some of the action items that are coming through in May, and all of them will require a presentation, because we've got to give you some of the background information. Even though you can read it, it's different when you hear somebody go over some of the finer details. So,
but then were those presentations not available for this meeting tonight? Because that's what this was supposed to be.
No, because we're not taking any action on these.
Right.
Is it different information than we are seeing tonight? I think is what she's asking.
Yes, they're different items.
No, but you have the same understanding as me that this was kind of like for that information. That way you kind of had a couple of weeks to kind of grind it over. And
yeah, and one of them is like the ESSER plan, for example, is one that you needed to have a heads up about.
So talking about communication, that's what I thought this meeting was, the chance to have all the presentations so that we could ask informal questions and not make any decisions or action. But then when it comes to the time to take the action,
better informed,
we're a little more prepared.
Well, not only that, but then administration knows kind of the pressure points, like, oh, that was something that they were really worried about.
Or this is what we needed some more clarification on, and they can bring it back.
Yeah, it says we have to have the opportunity to have open and authentic discussion and dialogue. So, you know, however we build that in, if it's this one before the next one, it's important before we are making big decisions, you know.
Is that what your understanding was?
No. Yes and no.
I mean, if it's not, then that needs to be built in that next meeting.
Yes, but so there's a lot of, for example, the report that was on there about our secondary learners and tracking their progress. That's part of our district improvement plan, right? Keeping up with our graduates, making sure that they're doing well. It's one of those progress reports. It could also be, once we have end of the year data, presenting that data to you. So it's not taken up during the regular board meeting, but that's information that just needs to be shared, like those kind of updates. Things like construction projects that require an action item, those type of things, those are going to be for the regular board meeting.
But I think one of the things that we expressed an interest in was getting previews of those things so that everybody had an opportunity to digest it, ask those questions collectively. That was the understanding I had as well. So maybe there's an opportunity to, I guess, revisit that to make sure that we all have a clear understanding of.
Okay, bringing you more items. Yes.
That are aligned to our strategic goals. That's important, right? Like if student achievement is our main focus, we need to spend more time looking at the data and be able to ask questions and see what on the strategic plan or the district improvement plan are going to address those things.
And a lot of those things don't require action, right? Because they're just part of the ongoing. All right, here's our data point for this particular initiative, and this is where we are in it, not necessarily an action item.
Which is perfect for this type of meeting.
Right.
So I don't think I'm still clear about what then.
Meeting is for.
Yes, what can we expect from this meeting?
Moving forward.
Yeah.
Well, the meeting in June is set up. That's supposed to be a joint meeting with the city. And I need to follow up with Warren to make sure that we've got our agenda items set and that we've got a meeting location and that the city council is on board with having that meeting. So that's the second one.
Well, that's a special event.
Yeah, that's a special.
But I'm talking about like for example, tonight then, like in your mind, what kinds of things did you see happening at this?
Just
meeting?
exactly what we did today. Because those are updates that we needed to give you as far as the informational items that were there.
Am I the only one?
No, so
here?
So I think I see the two disconnects, right? You were thinking this meeting was to give the reports that are kind of standard that take up time during our board meeting that we normally don't take action on them anyway. I think our understanding was it was for that,
Yes.
but also for anything that really we thought there was going to be a lot of dialogue back and forth that, one of the ones we get bogged down on, I guess, at nights.
Would be action items, but we wanted the information
beforehand,
set and digest ahead of time.
And we have done that in previous, last month we did it that way.
Did we?
And the month prior, I believe we did it that way too.
Yeah.
That's what I thought in my mind.
Yeah.
So it just sounds like there's some next meeting that are going to be there that didn't make it to this one, but.
So maybe in our agenda planning, that's what we need to say. This is like here's the whole month scope. This is at this meeting, action item meeting.
Yeah, because
this is what we want to know at this. Okay.
So do you think you can make those decisions based on, hey, this is going to be a really one that probably needs pre-presenting and then presenting with action?
Compared to what?
Compared to one that, we need action on this, but it's just approving, whatever, really does it need 2 meetings,
Right.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that's going to have to be your.
And sometimes it's also about timing. So if I can embark on a unique example that is just going to catch us between dates. So as part of the whole budget approval at the end of June, one of the line items in a budget are capital improvement projects. Well, we as an executive team didn't have a chance to discuss that topic until this Tuesday when we met as an executive team. So we agreed, okay, Henry, let's go ahead on May 27th. Let's go ahead and give the board a preview of what you're thinking about as needed capital improvement projects. No decision, just an informational item. Now we have to do it on the 27th of May because there's no other time in the June meetings. So no action item, but that's going to be one of those key. I need to give you a heads up about what we're thinking about with regard to capital improvement projects. Because then when we have the budget workshop, then we'll see all of these budget initiatives, and you will already had time to think about these capital improvement projects, just as one example. But that particular item didn't come up on our agenda until this past Tuesday. Too late. That would have been one of those perfect things.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
that would have been
one of those things to include at this meeting, but it's just a matter of timing.
One question I've had is, in general, has the board articulated to you, like how often they need information, what type of information, and what maybe we don't need? Has that ever been actually clear?
Well, we kind of have, meaning the executive team, we have a running calendar of things that we know the board needs to approve. Right now in the spring, it's all driven by budget, and we've been doing incremental pieces to that every month. So when we meet on a weekly basis, we put those things out.
And we also
of approval, just in general about communication.
It's always been a struggle. I mean, it really has.
We did start, which is in our board shared folder. Every month, we know that there's certain things that we have to talk about. So that's listed, and you can access that in the shared drive. So there is that. And we can update that if, there's something else we want to add to it that we want to know.
But to your point, back in December, we did have a conversation in our meetings about specifically to the subject about what we expected, what information we expected, what we thought might not be something that we
wanted.
Too much on. I don't think we've expanded much more than that, but we've had those conversations before.
I think sometimes, because the Friday report is a prime example, we've gone back and forth about what to include in there, what not to include. And I feel like as a board, I don't know that we even know what we want, because the minute we say, yeah, we don't need this, something comes up, we're like, why didn't we know that?
Right.
So are we still talking about the book? I mean, we still on agenda?
I mean, I was thinking like strategic,
Yeah,
when you think
I think
strategically, it's.
I just wanted to sanity check to make sure
Yeah,
we were still
no, I'm
under
just
our
saying
agenda item we had
strategic
posted.
and communication,
Okay.
like you have to be laser focused and know like what you want information about, how often you want that communicated. Like, we don't need to know everything, but
And what's going to be on the agenda.
yeah, like we may not need to approve it, like I said, but like it said in the book, we would need to maybe know the why.
But if y'all have noticed in the Friday reports, I've also been trying to give you a preview of, all right, these are the upcoming agenda items that are coming up. And what I've been doing, I've been going into our executive leadership team meeting notes and picking up nuggets from there. Okay, I need to give them a heads up about this. This is coming up. So no, I think we're definitely on topic. That's part of this chapter and
The communication.
and the communication and clarity and what we want to see with these meetings.
So I think if we go back to the first question about generating and shaping the course of action, I think knowing what those informational pieces are, knowing when to expect them, that helps us better engage. So especially because if you think about the newer initiatives where we are now individually, we're held accountable for student achievement. And there are some districts who have continuous issues with student achievement and they no longer have their own school boards anymore. The state takes over that. And so I think really looking at those data pieces, like that dashboard, once it's up and running, I think that's a way that we really get informed decisions specifically, or informed information about how students are actually performing. We're not asking down to the individual TEAC, but you can see at a very high level how kids are doing, and maybe even by campus or whatever. And so I think that's going to shape our questioning. And that is also going to guide that deep learning that they talk about, like it's very important.
The evaluation when it's time to talk about that. Well, the last thing was the four areas. This was kind of towards the end of chapter 2. And I just divided those up so we could get a good concept of all the 4 areas. So the 4 areas are systems thinking, strategic focus, deep learning, and manner. Shara, just because you're listed first, will you go system thinking?
Yeah,
like summarize that for us.
Yeah, I wrote system thinking is about stepping back and seeing patterns at a macro level, directing resources. A systems thinker understands that everything is connected. The goal is to take those actions that will most positively impact the system as a whole. System thinking should be in the service of something. Trustees should be in the helicopter making system decisions, like we said, not on the fire line making micro tactical decisions. It's funny, I was talking to my husband about this and he said, oh, governance, this is something we talk about all the time because he's a program manager for Dell. This is what we do. Because I'm always like, you don't seem very busy. He's like, well, that's because I put all these systems in place to help it all run and I'm checking in throughout. I was like, that connection right there just like clicked for me. I was like, oh, okay, I get it. And I said, my question was, can we use the strategic plan to help us focus on the something? That's my thought.
Mm-hmm. And I like that what you added to, like the example, when we discuss creating new positions or shifting how we're meeting the needs, how being able to tie that back into, and I think if we have that, placemat strategic plan thing, we can easily go back and.
It's funny, in the technology meeting yesterday, we were talking about the media librarians and what really clicked is when you reminded me, remember what we did with the library and our goals, where we're going with technology, like hearing that like helped me to frame these decisions.
Felix, you had strategic focus.
book talks about being effective at the focus by the governance of the strategic job. And I went around and around with this one because it forced me to see what the strategic what we wanted in results, right? And the biggest thing for us is that we talk about getting grades, and we talk about, you know, progress of the kids, and we talk about being able to look at the budgets and make sure that we hit all those goals, and looking at the TEKs. So defining that and being able to stay focused on every single meeting, like we've talked about here in the beginning, of having something to look at consistently. Achieving that. Are we hitting the mark? Are we getting there? Where are we? And keeping that focus consistently, maybe every meeting, every other meeting, can do to stay on plan for that.
I liked on page 39, it says, it is essential that each trustee understand that the value of the board is in the strategic oversight and support that the board provides. What the board brings to the table are the passion, the drive, the commitment to achieve the moral imperative, and not distracted by the day-to-day administrative challenges. And this is purposeful action. So, you know, like what you're saying, that we're focused on that, pointing back to that each time. Anybody else? Morgan, you have deep learning.
Yes, I really enjoyed this section. I actually sent Philip a text thanking him. I assumed that he assigned it to me, but it was you. But I thanked him for very much spoke to me. So first it talks about like understanding deep learning and also that boards now currently have to be so much more knowledgeable in so many different things that they didn't maybe even 5 years ago. So there's a lot more going on, and kind of along the same thought pattern that just our kids being able to read and write is not necessarily going to mean that they are going to be productive members of society and being successful adults out in whatever that adventure they go to. And so coming to meetings prepared, and then that your commitment to deep learning is critical to the success of the board. So while we can't all be super knowledgeable in all of the things, pick 3 or 4 and be very intentional and purposeful in your engagement in those 3 or 4 things, because we all have different skills that we bring to the table and different experiences that we bring to the table. And so if we can rely on each other to deep learn in certain aspects, we kind of fill in the gaps for each other. Another thing that is important is cultivating trust with your colleagues. So, we are relying on each other to be knowledgeable in these different areas, so that if it's something, like I said, that you're not familiar with, you know that somebody else is, and somebody else is being a really good steward in that area. But also engaging and having a trusting relationship with the administrative staff. That's critical. They're the ones that are actually doing that work. If at some point that there is like an issue of trust, or you feel like something's just not right, being forthcoming and engaging your board president and the superintendent to, I call it a trust tune-up. Like, let's figure out what is not connecting, or what information are you either misunderstanding or just not getting, because that trust is really critical. Especially like, again, if you think about like that data dashboard, we have to reasonably assume that all that information in there is correct, so that we engage with it with that mindset and we find it purposeful and intentional and useful. Another thing I really appreciated, because I feel like once you get sworn in, oftentimes we kind of look around and we're like, okay, so what am I actually allowed to do? Because when you're campaigning, you're going to change the whole world. When you get sworn in and you're sitting in the seat, you're sitting in a very narrow position. And I think not only for new board members, I think even for seasoned board members, sometimes it's important to kind of come back to center and remember kind of what your parameters are. But the book acknowledges that we are also parents, we're also community members. We're going to run into people at HEB that are having a rough day, and they're going to want to tell you all of the things. And so acknowledging that does happen, and that telling yourself that everything that is being shared does not necessarily reflect a holistic view of the topic. And I think that was really, don't dismiss it entirely, but remember it's not the entire story. So I thought that was really powerful. What else? Also a great way to keep in tune with student learning is planned and structured campus visits. Just showing up unannounced with no real purpose can build mistrust or anxiety on the campuses. It could also hinder their ability to do their actual work, which we want them there engaging in the work that we expect them to engage in. Deep learning is asking why behind the major programs being enacted. So, and then tying that back to this understanding, and it's one of our core values now, like asking questions is not questioning, it is seeking clarity so that you have a better understanding. And at the end of the day, you feel like I had enough information to make whatever decisions, or we agree that this is the thing, and here's how all these things fit into that thing. I thought that the piece about the structured plan campus visits to me was super powerful. And I've actually had this conversation with Dr. Thomas, especially this year. I felt like with all the stuff that are going on, the last thing I want to do is show up on a campus, even if they invite me, which they always graciously do. I know they invite all of us to come to their campuses. I never want to be in the way, because I always feel like any board member that there's a campus feel like they have to entertain us. They have to make sure that we leave feeling good. And so to me, I'd rather just not go, because I don't want to get in the way of them being able to do business. And so kind of my aha moment, and actually Ms. Campbell had pointed this out too, and I really appreciated it, was that it is critical for us as we're able to be a present on campus, not every day, but to engage in that way, because that actually builds trust with our staff, with us, because they see us differently. We're not as formal on a campus when we're watching a music performance or touring classrooms with them or whatever. It gives us also an opportunity to demonstrate, see some of that learning in action. And while it's not our job to engage in that learning, and it's not our job to direct that learning, I think it's powerful to see some of these decisions that feel kind of nebulous actually in action. You can see the outcome of that decision you made. So one of the things that I'm going to try to commit to is figuring out how to get on a campus visiting rotation, where once a month I take a day off, and it's scheduled and it's structured and it's purposeful, because that's another way that I can demonstrate that I'm engaged in the work that's happening in the campus. I never thought of it that way. I always felt like I would be in the way if I was there. And so the way they frame it really hit home for me.
I think two things based off of what you said, talking about that we are community members. And I think, Philip, you said this one time at a meeting, and we are parents and we are active, participants, that just because we're board members doesn't mean we're not all of those things too. And, that we can be part of the learning and the thought processes and stuff like that. And the other thing is, I know that at least for the next month, we'll have board officer elections again next month. So I'm not, as long as I'm sitting in this position, I highlighted that too, that I hope that people know that, feel comfortable and confident that if there is that lack of confidence or something is not feeling right, and I need to understand this, that that people can feel the freedom to come to myself and Dr. Thomas, and let's work this out together, because that's the last thing we want, to have that little drop of ink start spreading. So at least for the next month while I'm sitting here, I want to be available to you guys to know that you can have confidence in that. And I think I speak for Dr. Thomas that she would feel the same.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Well, since Terrence left, I was on, Philip and I just I don't even know if he knew that.
I didn't.
Gave the two of us 2 subjects just because there were only 4, but I had manner. So I don't know if you guys read this part about watching the board meeting with the volume off and watching your mannerisms and your body language and what that is communicating to people who can't hear. But yeah, I was like, ooh, I don't know if I want to do that.
I know I don't.
This was just good, a good reminder about, so I underlined one of the most important and often least appreciated traits of highly effective trustees is the management of our public behavior. Trustees with a governance mindset always minds their manner. And I think so much about not just our physical manner, but our presence on social media as well. It's so easy sometimes to get caught up in right, wrong, or indifferent, we are in the position we're in. And so it's critical that we mind our manner. And because whatever you meant is not going to be perceived that way, you know, potentially. And above all, I love this too. I really love this part. That we are conscious of modeling the behavior that we want the kids in our district to emulate, you know, and whether that's on social media or whether that's in our physical presence.
What the striking part of it is that 7% is verbal, 93% is mannerism, and that is huge. And it goes back to a conversation that I had with you, Dr. Thomas, about what you just said is I haven't wanted to go to the schools yet because of COVID, because of all the other things, but you reminded me that they need to hear from you guys. It gives them confidence. It gives them the ability to know that you're backing them up, that your presence there is a difference to what they do. And looking at it from that perspective, it just makes sense that we don't want to be all over the place, you know, at all the schools, but we do want to, just like Morgan said, schedule a moment, a time, monthly,
and be strategic.
Be diligent about that. And then watch our P's and Q's when we're there.
You know, it'd be cool. I always liked going, you know, when we did the retention bonus, right? It used to be a letter with them and we'd go out and hand them out. You know, it was a very cool moment when we were on the campus, you know, thanking teachers or whatever too. It may be a cool thing with the teachers of the month to, you know, kind of pick a board member and somebody to go and deliver that to them on campus too, before they know about it too, you know.
Oh, I love that.
That's a great idea.
That is a good idea.
You know, it's you're there at a positive time and stuff like that too.
I mean, it's not like when Philip Boutwell hands you a check for $800.
I do that to you.
And I appreciated it.
So I tell you what, with only 3 weeks left, you know, Dr. Sermani and I try to get, he more than me, really try to get out to the campuses, and people are always, thanks so much, it's good to see you. So between now and the end of the year, if you want to, he got to play the guitar today with the kids in music class. The kids were playing the ukuleles and he grabbed a guitar and started playing with them. But between now and the end of the school year, if you want to tag along with Dr. Sermani or me on one of those campus visits, we usually go in the morning. We'll just walk into a campus. What we usually do, we just go up and down the hallway. I usually just stop by the door and just wave, not doing anything in particular. We just kind of do the wave thing. But if one of you was with us, I think they'd really like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
So let us know and we'll get you on the calendar.
Just
Cottonwood Creek at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning.
8 o'clock tomorrow.
I saw my schedule.
I gave all my shirts away.
I'd be able to go. Tying all this, the manner up, it talks about, like, is there a secret sauce to effective governance? And I think to me that, well, he says the closest we found is in wisdom inherent in the governance mindset. You know, so just always coming back to the governance mindset. Are we gonna like get it wrong sometimes? Yes. Are we gonna get off track sometimes? Yes. But are we willing to acknowledge that and come back to what that governance mindset is? And are we willing to, you know, with one another, lift each other up out of the fire and put each other back up on the balcony? So just be willing to be willing. So that was, I think all I said on about manner for that.
I really appreciate also like the book study in general, because I think like those of us that have been on the board more than a year, like the last year and a half, I would say it's probably been the hardest year and a half ever for lots of reasons. But I think the times where it's hardest is when we have to lean on each other and hold each other accountable, because it's not always going to be, you know, sunshine and football games and like the fun stuff. I think this year has really forced us to really be intentional. And I think that's how you grow as a board, is going through those really difficult times together.
And that's how we become, in my opinion, the premier board of the premier district too, is by being willing to do the hard work and have the hard conversations. And, you know.
So here's your closing question. When we finished chapter 1, we developed our norms, which are now part of our blue folders. So now that we finished chapter 2, is there any action we need to take? Is there anything we need to add to our operating procedures? Is there anything we need to even add to our norms? Or do you see any action that needs to take place as a result of learning from chapter 2?
I think we did a good bit with the, where was it at? Defined accountability partner, right? Because I think it's so hard for us to go from here to here, you know, and not be up here where we need to be, you know. And I know Morgan's called me before and said, hey, you know, you said whatever, you know. Billy's called me before, you know. Morgan's called me and asked me, am I in the weeds? You know, what's your opinion? You know,
the answer is yes.
Yeah, and being able to be honest about
it is. I mean, and we have a good talk, you know, maybe here, so maybe here, not so much, you know. So I think it's important for us to have a, you know, or you guys to have a sounding board, you know, to each other to say, okay, you know, we need to be up here looking at the 30,000 foot view instead of.
I think that's being willing to go back to what is the governance mindset and are we there?
And I think also what Morgan suggested with having the strategic plan like in front of us will help us sort of stay focused and frame our discussions a little bit more. So I think that can maybe be one of the takeaways too.
Yeah. What's funny is I already have a monitoring document. All I have to do is print it.
There you go.
Just making that at the forefront of our discussion, I think would be how we use it.
All right. Chapter 3, Shara, you got chapter 3?
Sure, yes.
You guys will be assigned a chapter at some point, so.
Reading ahead.
Be ready. Okay.
Can I say something before we close? Even if it's not the agenda?
Is it?
Sort of. It's related to adjournment.
Okay.
Okay.
So this is your last adjournment.
Oh, it is, isn't it?
It is.
And you know what? I've been tearing up thinking about that.
I don't know how to say, why are you bringing this up right now? But you have to.
I adjourn the meetings typically.
She'll miss you.
It's fun.
Is that what you wanted to say?
Wait, I got agenda items I want to add.
And we'll get to say goodbye on the 27th, but
I'm your neighbor. Come on.
you're my neighbor, but it's so now you can just be my neighbor.
You can tell her what you really think.
Huh? Come on, it's not even the going away deal.
I know it's not, but you started it by bringing the shirts over.
James, I brought a bunch of shirts. They all say board member and.
So just know I'm deeply appreciative to you.
And I appreciate the work you're doing, so.
And taking a chance on a new superintendent. And so just.
Wait, he wasn't.
Wait, I wasn't there, remember? I had a heart attack.
I had a heart attack.
Maybe that's why.
And you gave me your support 100% of the time, even if you weren't part of the interview process. You just have to know how much I appreciate that.
And I appreciate everything you're doing too. So.
Okay. All right. No more questions.
All right. Make a motion, we adjourn.
Seconding.
I'm not seconding.
Second by Felix. All in favor? Motion passes.
That old furniture, you're good furniture.
Sure.